Put your red shirt on and a brown coat too. Everybody's joining the crew. We got just one ring, let we rule them all. Hope you'll remember your towel. Get your Ulu feathers and your middle guns. A sonic screwdriver or a sword +1. Use Valerian steel if it will get you to come. To the big tank. To the big tank. The Rocky Mountain big tank.
Hi, I'm Guy.
Hi, I'm Troy.
Hi, I'm Chelsea.
Hi, I'm Emily.
And this is Geek Tank Season 6.
Your Season 6 sized podcast.
It really totally is, too.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. Well, we are now at Season 6, and all is awesome. Or at least we think we are at Season 6. We could be at Season 5, but stuck in a time loop going back in time. Who knows? Anything could happen.
I looked outside, and it looked like time has progressed.
I mean, I don't know. I don't work anymore, so days blend together, and everything seems like it's the same. And
yeah, I haven't seen anywhere outside of my neighborhood, so it may be only my neighborhood is progressing in its own time loop.
It's always possible.
Anything could happen.
My cat got fatter, so something's happening. I think there's some time progression there. Because you don't get fat all at once.
feeding is now a chunk.
I'm sure it's not pregnancy.
No, he's a boy.
Oh, okay, that'd be well. It is 2020.
Yeah.
He also gained the quarantine 15. It's just for him, it's like actually 15 pounds and not like
COVID-19.
proportional to his weight.
Wow.
He gained the COVID-19.
Oh,
He was a chunk to begin with. He's just a little more plump now. That's fine.
Right.
It's more fuzz to cuddle.
Exactly.
Right.
It's more fuzz to suffocate me when I sleep. But
Yes, and I'm still mad at him. The last time I saw him, he farted on me.
Does you say last time you saw him, he killed you?
No, he was being all cuddly, like cuddling. I was cuddling him because Emily was camping like a long while back. He was being all cuddly and cute, and then he farted on me, and so I dropped him and left.
That's what you do with babies too. They fart on you. Just drop them and leave them.
fart on you, you just
Yeah.
it's
Next. So I got a list of shows I've been catching up on since. Hey, I've had time to watch shows. So since we don't really do our little news stuff anymore. Oh, it's a hand.
That's not necessarily an anymore thing. I actually was thinking about doing news stuff again on
Bringing it back.
Even. Yeah, I think that'd be good.
You got some news stuff?
Oh, well, not necessarily, but because we didn't plan for it until right now.
Yeah, but you've got Lower Decks.
I do have Lower Decks. Episode 4 came out today. We are 6 episodes now from the premiere of Discovery Season 3. So we're at 6 weeks to Discovery Season 3, which I'm looking forward to. This is the 23 weeks of Star Trek that CBS All Access has. We've got 10 episodes of Lower Decks, followed by 13 episodes of Discovery Season 3. And then finally, I'll be done with Star Trek. But I will never be done with Star Trek.
Have you heard all the rumors lately? Like everybody, I get news on my phone and I love to watch it because you never know what chaos they're going to bring up. But they were saying that CBS All Access was thinking of canceling all of the Star Trek shows, mainly Picard. And I was like,
that's not.
So we have a couple of people who are into this. If I say it loudly enough, my fantasy will come true. And I hate all the new Star Treks because it's not TNG. And so I hate them all. So I will put out news that says everybody's canceling them. This is like that same guy who says that the new Star Warses are going to be canceled.
This boy. Yeah. So I have news for that person. I'm just gonna talk directly to you and some other people for a minute. It's not about you.
Right? This is the shh, let other people enjoy things.
If you're that angry about things like one show or one movie, like honestly, please reevaluate your life. Like I do it for giggles, I do not support companies that I don't appreciate, you know, like right now, Activision, there's a huge report that they are not paying their employees, especially on the lower levels, like QA testers and first level engineers, a living wage. So they can't even afford lunch in the cafeteria, let alone rent. And so I refuse to give them more money.
Who is this again?
Activision.
Oh,
Blizzard again.
It's always Blizzard with this one.
Ubisoft, I'm so disappointed in. They've been essentially harboring people who have been the main source of a lot of sexual harassment for their female and male employees, both alike. It happens on both ends. And they were allowed to quit before it got out and get a severance package. And that is wholly inexcusable. And the CEO says he didn't know anything about it. But if you're running a company, it's your job to know.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just voting with my dollar and not supporting them monetarily. Now, we did stream Overwatch not too long ago. We don't make any money off of that. They don't make any money off of that. Probably won't stream Overwatch very often. I do love the game, and I love the people who put the effort into it, and I paid for it because I appreciated those people at the time, but they need to change flat out. And that's how you create change in your system.
The only EA game I run is
Don't buy
Sims.
CBS All Access. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, that's my thought too, is I'm like, well, okay, but CBS All Access right now has something in the order of like 15 or 20 million viewers or something like that.
Oh, they have a monopoly on it. So
subscribers, they've got subscribers, and they're all Trekkies. And though I kind of do
capitalize on the Trekkies.
Yeah, I mean, I'm aggravated that they capitalized on us. The truth of the matter is, it's $10, which is a medium tier on a patron setup. So I'm just effectively a $10 a month patron for Star Trek.
For 3 different shows, you're paying like $2.50 per show a month.
Right. And B, I'm actually getting more Star Trek out of being a $10 a month patron. You know? I mean, I hate to say this, but as an artist who has a Patreon, I really suck at giving people extra stuff. And I keep trying to do it, and I keep not doing it very well.
It's hard, like, to not specifically know your audience, you know?
Well, and it's not just that. It's that I barely have enough time to do the things that need to get done, much less extra stuff. And so I keep telling my patrons that, hey, I'm trying my best, but the truth of the matter is that you're really just my tip jar.
That's your best is not good enough. That's the truth of the matter.
Yeah,
just
most of my patrons know me well enough to know that I've got a kid, and
so
I think he likes supporting me in that aspect. So that's perfect.
Your fan likes you, guy.
Yep, my one fan.
So this streaming access stuff is kind of like a monkey paws thing came true, because I remember 20 years ago, back when people were paying like $40-50 for 60 channels on cable, they're like, why can't we prorate this? Because I don't want to watch 40 of these channels. And so in their mind, they're thinking, let's divide $50 by 60 channels, and then I'll pay per channel. What they didn't realize is each channel is going to cost $10. So it's like,
well, and you still have to pay for internet.
Yeah, so it's even more.
Now we have like 450, is it? I remember when there were 6 channels on TV and you had to whack the side just to get one of them.
Yeah, you had 6 channels.
Right. I'm like, wow.
Public access television, man. Like PBS.
I guess if you count
the other version of PBS. And
yes, we had 2 PBS stations here.
Yeah. So
we had 2 PBS stations, and we had 2 independents, and then our 3 networks.
See?
And then
I remember like
it was on Channel 2. I know, because Channel 2 was my show place. I lived on Channel 2. It was great.
I remember it just being CBS, NBC, ABC, Fox, and then the public access, like 5 channels. Maybe
yeah, but you lived in Louisville.
I lived way out in the middle of nowhere.
But you have to remember that there are still premium channels now, right? Like Stars and HBO are still a subscription within your cable unit, right? Like, I will never call it what it's actually called, but Skinamax is still a premium channel. Some of the HD channels are premium just so they have higher quality and no commercials, which is kind of nice because
Disney's still premium. They've got two
Discovery
Disney
Channel's
One of them
premium.
is
Discovery's premium now.
Discovery's premium.
Oh, wow.
And you know what really makes me mad more than anything is since I started paying for cable, which was 1992 or 1993, I have paid $10 a month for basketball because there is a $10 a month surcharge for sports.
ESPN finally broke off this year. Finally. You don't have to pay
and that's since 1992. Now, my mom could have done that because she was a Bronco nut and she was a Avalanche nut. And she
but
was
that's a priority, right? Like you should be able to pick your cable package based on what you want. Like
I don't watch sports unless I'm at a sports bar with buddies, and we're doing that because it's like trying to be manly or something. I don't know. We just kind of periodically do that, but I don't ever watch sports. I have no interest in sports. I don't really watch it.
I don't either.
I
listen to baseball still. That's my nostalgia is listening to baseball.
Right. Well, watching football for me will always be nostalgic because of my mom.
Your mom, right? Mm-hmm. But like, you're not going to go seek that out every day unless it's a particular day where like, oh, I miss her.
Right.
I'm going to go.
Right. And so for the last 25, 30 years, I have paid $10 a month for sports that I never watch.
Mm-hmm.
And that still makes me mad.
Emily, what's the channel that you were paying for to watch all the Korean shows?
That was it's a specific app and a specific channel. It's called Viki Rakuten, and it's you do pay-per-view, but you're also with your payment in your subscription, there's ads on it regardless whether you pay or not. And your payment in your subscription actually goes to paying the people who translate it, and not everyone gets paid, but they're basically relying on kind of volunteer translators and people to help make it more accessible. So that's a case where you really don't mind paying the $10 a month because you get to watch dramas that you wouldn't normally be getting because they're still not offered on Netflix or Hulu or HBO or whatever. So you're getting these dramas that you don't get necessarily, but they're translated, and you pay $10 a month and you get them, and it's amazing and wonderful, and you get to watch Boys Over Flowers until your eyeballs fall out.
Well, and you're not getting now Netflix is starting to dub everything and not offering a subtype.
Yeah.
Which is weird to me because it's not good.
Well, we've gone years with subs and dubs on all of this stuff because of the forefront of what the anime fans did.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the anime fans made a big change in the culture. Good morning or good evening, Jerry.
And not just the anime fans, but also fans of like old samurai and martial arts films as well. What was the movie that we watched the other day, babe? Kagemusha. Oh God.
Sounds delicious.
It's an old film. My only problem is the white subtitles on a white background, but they can't update them because they're stuck to the film at that point. So it's like, ooh, it's rough, but you can get through it. You can get the general idea. You know what I mean? But I do remember talking about the old anime crowd having to grab tapes in like a back store with no subtitles or hope of translating, trying to get just the visual imagery to see what they could get. Descriptions, maybe.
And I am actually referring to the late 80s, early 90s anime fans that started to really put a change in with the cultures, because they were, in the late 80s, the anime would come over here, get heavily cut up, and then it'd be dubbed, and they would change the script, they change the title, they change all the characters' names, and that would be what we would get.
So I just saw an expose on the American Sailor Moon where they were going to Americanize it.
Oh yeah,
it's real bad.
Well, and that's what Sailor Moon is like, the watershed.
Right. Well,
Sailor Moon was the moment where we heard, us anime fans had heard that they were going to make an American Sailor Moon, and we were like, yeah, no, come on, just put out Sailor Moon, please.
And it was so good. Like, that's a formative piece of my childhood on WB.
Right.
Watch that.
And And it was like that. And not only that, it was, okay, but don't change the names. Oh, yeah, well, we won't.
Serena.
Her name's not funny.
No,
It just doesn't make sense.
Molly.
Uranus isn't gay. There are no gay people in the world.
They're cousins.
They're cousins.
Yeah, I
Wait
love
about
the kissing cousins. Kissing cousins.
I mean,
What's so
somebody's
funny
figure it
is
out.
there isn't a soul that didn't figure that out somewhere along the line.
I mean, later.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty funny. So,
If you want to turn the light on, please.
So wasn't it Boys Over Flowers that you and I did a watch party on, Emily?
You're right. It was Boys Are. I just couldn't instantly
we're
think of the
totally
name of
supervised, is
the
what we are.
other show that I love endlessly. It's based off of a manga where a girl ends up pretending to be a guy, goes to an all-guys school, falls in love with a high jumper. And the moral of the story is the guy in the specific one is Lee Min-ho from Shiny, and I love Min-ho, so I can't remember the name of the thing, but I don't Min-ho.
That was definitely
I know
weird.
name, but I don't
No,
know.
no, no. Yes.
Speaking of news, though, BTS. Tell us about what happened to BTS this week. Speaking of
Oh my
news,
God, Emily, go ahead.
It's because I'm the one who's more collected about it today.
Yeah.
So BTS has broken several records across the internet, one of which it was reaching over 100 million streams within the first 24 hours of a video being put on YouTube, which was only previously almost reached by Blackpink at like 87 million.
Mhm.
With Kill This Love. So they had a really big, and it's not even a comeback, it's just a single. So they had a really big release for that single, and it's still going strong. The goal is like the radio plays. It's also their first song that's entirely in English. And it was written by 2 American producers, and they just picked the song and because they fell in love with it, and they fell in love with the vibe. And the vibe carries through really well to like kind of that end of summer and just enjoying and bopping and having a good time. So
Super cute. I'm really glad that we broke records because Army worked for it.
and then Blackpink's releasing a new single tomorrow with Selena Gomez. No, I'm just kidding. Selena Gomez.
Selena Gomez.
Yeah,
So-
Blackpink. I hope it's really good. Selena's a
I hope so too, because I agree with you. The one that she did with Lady Gaga was awesome.
Yeah, Sour
The
Candy
one
was
that
a
they
bop,
did with
but
Lady Gaga.
How You Like That, the latest comeback was. But we can get to K-pop a whole nother time because I don't think we're here for K-pop today. What are we here for today, guys?
Cake Pops. We're here for Cake Pops.
Yes, always
I
here
love
for
cake pops.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, if you, since we're not all in the same place, our usual Starbucks, pumpkin spice is back. A leaf has not hit the ground, and pumpkin spice is back, and Emily and I are vibing.
Mm.
She
Yep.
screamed at me all yesterday. She
So
was
is
like,
my wife. She's into that too.
"Oh my God!"
We still have quite a bit of time before mine comes out.
Yeah, we're still waiting for the mint.
Yeah,
Oh,
we're waiting for the peppermint mocha.
fair. Oh,
So I was
man.
going to mention real
Fair.
quick before we move on, if you are interested in HBO Max, which by the way, the nice thing about a lot of these services, like even CBS, if you have a chunk of time set aside for a particular month, you could just binge watch and only pay for 1 month of subscriptions and then let it drop until the next season comes out.
I
Is
do
that what you- yeah,
I've
well,
done
that's
this
what we do.
many times. I did this with CBS All Access. I just binged.
Mhm. So there's a lot of good stuff on HBO HBO Max that I recommend, and it's like Lovecraft Country. I've only seen the first episode of it. It's intense.
I'm
That's all I'm
so,
gonna say. It's intense.
so excited.
Everybody dies in the end.
I mean, it's Lovecraft, yes.
It's Lovecraft set in the '60s, dealing with racial problems at the same time. So
I mean, Lovecraft was.
he was a jerk. He's a good writer, but he was a jerk. Also,
That tracks.
if you haven't seen it on Netflix, there's a really awesome show called The Good Place, which tons of people were telling me was awesome, and I finally saw it, and yes, it is awesome. Season 4 is not on Netflix yet, so you can't finish it, but there are only 4 seasons, so it wraps up and it's done. Cobra Kai, which is a show that picks up after the Karate Kid shows, which is actually really cool, is coming to Netflix August 28th, tomorrow. So you can catch seasons 1 and 2 of that on Netflix. And it's definitely interesting because they pull the whole reversal of who's the good guy and who's the bad guy. And it gets into a lot more of the gray area as opposed to the black and white of the way that the movies were. And The Boys, which season 2 is going to hit September 4th, but only episodes 1 through 3. Not for kids. That's on Amazon Prime. And then recently watched an interesting documentary that's on Netflix now called High Score. And it talks about the creation of video games up to when Doom comes out. But it's
really? When is Doom supposed to come out now? Considering all the problems.
I have no idea. This is the Doom, the first Doom that came out.
First Doom.
93, I think it was. There's 90 something like that. But it's a really well put together documentary that has a lot to offer besides just video games. So, but yeah, that's I wanted to throw all that stuff out there. And then tonight's topic is actually all about a Star Trek episode.
No.
Star Trek episode.
Surprising.
2.
Wow.
Of them. We're on a Star Trek kick. I mean, we were on a tabletop kick, and now we're on a Star Trek kick.
So the episode that we're going to be going into, it's two-parter. It's Past Tense, Part 1 and 2, which is Season 3, Episode 13 and 14, I believe.
I think so. I had it pulled up.
Should be seasons
3, episodes 11
and 12.
Two-parter, yeah.
Yeah, 11 and 12.
So there was a meme.
It's the middle, dead smack center of Season 3.
Yeah, there was a meme going around. That's what kind of inspired this topic tonight. The meme was inaccurate because the meme was saying this episode's set in 2020. It's not exactly set in 2020. It's set in 2024. So we're only 4 years away from when this episode's supposed to happen.
And this is definitely one of those things that the Trekkies are chattering a little bit about.
I mean, it's very topical, and it's easy to relate it right now. It's very easy to relate right now and to compare and contrast, especially since we're all kind of sitting at home.
We're all imprisoned in sanctuary districts.
And if there's one thing I love about Star Trek is it always starts a discussion, because Star Trek, for all the fluff episodes, there are some episodes that are just written so well and address these big social issues that you kind of don't think about sometimes, and it just puts it at the forefront of your mind. They're good discussion starters.
So let's go on ahead and real quick, I'll give a quick recap of what Past Tense 1 and 2 is.
And I will throw out there, in case if people want to be completely surprised by it, you might not want to watch this episode yet, because there's not really any way to talk about it without giving away.
And what he means is this episode of Geek Tank. Yeah. I want to be surprised, so I didn't watch the episodes. Just like you told me to.
Yeah, you might want to go watch Past Tense first.
Yes, the gist of it is that the Defiant gets the Orb of Time, which causes the Defiant to pop back in time real quick to 2024. But it also, it doesn't cost the Defiant to. It causes the Transporter to. They went back to Earth, and they were beaming down to Earth, and it was Kira, Dax, and Bashir.
No, I'm sorry.
It was Bashir, Cisco, and Dax beaming down to Earth. Boy, I'm having issues.
Yes, you are.
I'm running on too little sleep because somebody, they won't name any names, peed in the bed. And it was
Here, tag me in. Tag me in.
Other way.
Damn it. Tag.
And so instead of teleporting down at the time that they were aiming for, they actually end up in San Francisco 2024. And Dax ends up one level lower, and they're all knocked out, whereas Bashir and Cisco are on the ground level, and the police officer comes up, and they're there with no ID, they're sleeping on the streets illegal, they've got to go to Sanctuary, I believe they called it, right?
Yeah, Sanctuary Districts.
So it's where they had a wall, not that wall's topical at all this past 4 years, but they had built a wall around Sanctuary where you put all of the mentally ill and poor people, basically.
Yep.
Or people you don't know what to do with.
Right. I thought it was kind of funny that, funny and ironic that they called people DIMS, but they DIMS, but that's a term that people who aren't Democratic used to insult Democrats as Dems, and those are probably this never saw Star Trek, let alone that Star Trek episode. So it's not a reference to that.
If politicians watch Star Trek, they might learn something.
So
Reading Rainbow.
they make it to these sanctuary districts where effectively they are stuck in this loop to get out, or unable to get out.
Mm-hmm.
So they meet this guy named Gabriel Bell, and then that sparks something, and they're like, have you ever heard of the Bell riots? This was a big moment in Earth history where these sanctuary districts changed everything to the way that we dealt with stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then shock of shock, Gabriel Bell gets killed.
I'm glad it didn't turn into a Weekend at Bernie's where they're just trying to carry him with them the whole time. And pretend
That would have been cool. You got to admit, that'd be a cool episode.
That would have been me writing the episode.
Like a wheelbarrow. They just carry around the wheelbarrow.
They picked an actor that looks very similar to Cisco in facial structure. He's got the prominent cheekbone.
To make it the plot overall work.
Yeah, and they fix what happens earlier very quickly when Cisco and Bashir are put in essentially to the sanctuary. They give false names. They're like, oh yeah, we gave false names, sorry. And Cisco is just going around like, my name's Bell, Gabriel Bell.
Yeah, because history has it where Bell was supposed to die heroically in order to make a point and change everything politically, as opposed to dying in the side of the street instead. And so now in order to try to set history correct again, they have to figure out a way to make that past tense of Bernie's. Yeah, that was what I thought.
I'm also amazed that throughout this episode, you have two people that are very much antagonistic. Actually, technically three. You have the governor who just doesn't care, who says, we're going to form a committee and we're going to fix all this. No, we'll reevaluate. And they're like, no. You have the officer, who's an older white gentleman, who is just hard grizzled in the way he is, because this is the way things are and you can't do anything to change it, so why bother? And then you have the ghost, and ghosts are just kind of people who are generally angry and violent and rude and ridiculous.
Antifa. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Now we're going to get flagged, Troy.
I know.
But
well, somebody probably already created our opening credits, and they're probably tagging us right now for it.
Right, then suing us.
But you have a BC who's a ghost, and he just really wants to kill hostages. He's just all riled up and just cannot calm down. And Cisco's trying to deal with both BC and the officer at the same time. Like,
and the mayor.
I'm trying to be reasonable. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you guys are not giving an inch. And I'm real sick of it. Like, there is real change here, and you can do this. You just need to shut up and listen and then act, kind of thing.
So the thing that's interesting about past tense is at the 10,000 foot view, it highlights one of the biggest problems in our culture right now, which is we think in our culture that when you are down and out, you can just pick yourself up and get moving again. But the truth is you can't. You end up in these spirals and you're stuck permanently weighed out, and there's no way to get back in. And it takes help from the outside. It takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of resources just to get you out of the downward spiral. And this episode, we were when this episode came out in the 90s, we were just starting to see that happen. Mm-hmm. But now here we are in 2020, and people they get into debt spirals where they can never, ever get out.
But that's how you get the American dream.
Right. So that's part of it is they also are illustrating the two kinds of people we have in the world, which is the people who are like, look, you're already in sanctuary. That's your fault because you screwed up. I don't have to do anything. You're the one that puts you there, not me.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and also talks about, there's a big commentary on mental health and how we treat it. We used to have mental health facilities, and unfortunately they were abused, and so they were abolished. And a lot of mentally ill people, unfortunately, can't afford hospital bills because we live in a country that doesn't believe in universal health care.
Right.
And we just believe that if they go crazy, we can lock them up and hide them away, and it's fine instead of getting critical care. There's one key part where Bashir is pointing out that there is a man with schizophrenia there, and if they just got him to a hospital and proper medication, even in 2024, he could live a normal life. And I have a friend who's schizophrenic, and he is completely normal. I never would have guessed when he told me. It was very much a shock, but I was happy that he trusted me enough to tell me, because it's very well looked down upon, right? And even like we talk about mental health now, like people taking mental health days, and employers are just like, oh, sweet soul.
Yeah, well, you can take a mental health day, but we're going to fire you for it.
Rub some dirt on it, you know.
Yeah. So there's some interesting discussions, but the most important thing is that there are some key words that ended up in this episode that, ironically, we actually ended up with. There are sanctuary cities here. It's not the same thing, but it is interesting that we have gotten to a point in our culture where we believe the word sanctuary needs to be said. And the writers of this, which is, by the way, the writers here were the showrunner of Deep Space Nine, Ira Stephen Bear, and Robert Hewitt Wolf, who was one of the key Dominion War writers. So these are the heavy hitters who put this episode together. They weren't screwing around.
No, and they did not pull punches.
No, they didn't.
It's a really frustrating and upsetting episode.
It is.
It throws it in your face and it keeps it there.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the balance of people that they show as well, because these people are all supposed to be destitute, and you see people that you think are like clean and nice, and you see people that are kind of dirty and ew, and you see these people who look violent, but you're not sure what their intentions are. They have this mix of people that, of course, our snap judgment make perceptions on, and I believe they fully did that for a purpose. It's Star Trek. Everything is very intentional.
Yeah, everything has a reason. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they show the dichotomy of the availability of food too, because when Jadzia is at the high class party, there's food and drink everywhere. Whereas when you go back down to the grounds where Cisco and Bashir's at, they're waiting in line to get food, and they're making jokes about how by the time they get there for dinner, it'll be time for breakfast because they're
waiting in such a long line.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that I did notice something throughout the episode. You don't see a lot of women. There are not a lot of women talking, other than Jadzia and the gal at the security station, who actually is very sweet and very empathetic. I loved her character.
Well, and the negotiator from the
police. Negotiator is kind of a throwaway.
What's sad is because she actually is a heavy hitting actress.
Is she really?
Yeah, she used to be she used to be a comedic actress. She used to be in comedies back in the 70s and 80s.
Comedians hit hard. When they hit the heart, they hit hard.
Yeah, and so she was. Come on, what was not Too Close for Comfort? Was it Too Close for Comfort? The one with the dad who had his two daughters living with him, and they were adult daughters, and it was driving him crazy. Anyway, she was from that show, and that ran for like 5 seasons or 6 seasons or something like that. So she was a seasoned actress.
She comes across as very cold. She's there to make negotiations, and it doesn't matter what happens at the end of the day for her.
But she does. There's the part where she is talking to the mayor, because she wasn't the mayor. What was her position?
She was the negotiator.
She's talking to the mayor, and she's saying, you don't hear the mayor's side of the conversation because she's on a phone, but she's saying, we don't know that they're dead. We need more time. And you can tell that she's being given the order, send in the riot patrol to take care of this. So they do set her up to say she's doing this against her better judgment.
Yeah.
So.
It's just a small kind of.
Yeah. Well,
there's so much going on. They probably could get more time.
And it's interesting. Ira Stephen Bear has said a few things. For those of you who have ever gotten the opportunity to see What We Left Behind, which is the retrospective on Deep Space Nine, Ira Stephen Bear says there were so many things. We were moving so fast and moving so quickly that so many of us let our biases get into our way without knowing it. He said, if I had more time, I would have loved to have had more homosexual relationships on the show, a lot more. I mean, we tried to forward our women so that they weren't just archetypes. Major Kira wasn't just some, just some completely butch character, and
I love Kira.
was very fluid,
Very much.
and she was, and we let them be women, and and stuff like that. He's like, we really worked hard on that. Remember, in the 90s, that wasn't a thing. Women had to be fitting into these archetypes. He said, but there were so many episodes where he said, I wish we'd pushed a little harder. It was like there was like this cut back to them editing things in the editing bay, and the editor's like, can we say that we were really good at LGBT and stuff like that? And Ira goes, no, I think we didn't serve that community as well as we should have.
That's a lot for them to say that, and it's really good that they commented on their bias, that unconscious bias, because that's a big topic right now in particular.
Well,
and it's hard to say, like, I was trying to do the best that I could, but it wasn't, good enough. On my end. I could have done more. It's great to hear that, and I think it's comforting to hear that as well, what they could have done and what they might do in the future, because essentially anything, that they didn't get to just means that they'll push for that more later, because it's on the forefront of their mind.
Well, and that's the thing that when I mean, you think about Deep Space Nine, they're furthering race relations. They're furthering women in power, because Deep Space Nine came before Voyager.
Mm-hmm.
And so putting Kira as the first officer and having her have power struggles with Cisco was a major thing.
And the discussions that they have are fantastic too, because you get to hear both sides, and I think that's really important to every story. It's always good to hear both sides, and a lot of people forget about that. They get riled up about one side, and they forget that there is another.
Right. Well, and
that the other side's human.
Yeah.
And still deserving of some motive of respect, even if you don't agree.
Yeah, Bashir even says, when he's there, he says, seeing this makes me wonder, how different are we really from Cardassians and from Romulans? If we're pushed far enough, will we just resort back to this kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
And
it's so emotional.
Yeah, Cisco's like, as long as I'm a Starfleet officer, I will not let that happen.
Which is so sweet. It's so easy, especially right now that we're all like shut in, and some of us are jobless, and some of us are uncertain about the future and have many things that have been canceled one after another. It's really hard to be objective and not be emotional, because everyone has been affected, but it's hard to kind of remember that when you're stuck on your own and isolated. Even though we are connected by the internet, like, this is not the same.
No, it's really not. I'm going to hug everybody. I'm going to hug random people on the street when we finally get out of here.
There's going to be so much
fun. I'm starved. I swear to God.
Right? And like, being stuck in with Tyler has been nice, but like, it's not the same when you are used to seeing so many people every day.
Yep.
And being able to converse in person is very different from online, because tone and facial cues and patience is something that we really don't have online.
Right. Brent also wants to add that Kira was also in a combat role, which in 1993 was an unheard of thing, or at least it wasn't that it was unheard of.
It wasn't
that was back in the days when we had our first female combat pilot die launching off the deck of a carrier, and they said it was because she was a woman, not because the F-14 flamed out. Right? Exactly. I mean, like, the F-14 flamed out. It lost an engine on takeoff.
That woman.
But because it was a woman, clearly she's not qualified to fly the jet. I'm like, how many people have we lost in 14s coming off the deck? I mean, that's a thing. 14s do that. That's one of the reasons why we retired those birds.
There's still a large, even in 2020, there's a large percentage of the population that don't think women should serve in combat roles.
Mm-hmm. Which is ridiculous.
But there are still women in submarines, and they do fine.
I met a wonderful lady once at Sakura Festival, and she was a Marine, and she was also black, and we had this fascinating discussion about, because she was older, she was retired, she wasn't in the service anymore, and so, and actually her daughter is a Marine now, and so it's 2 generations of Marines. And it's fascinating talking to what she had to go through in the late 80s, early 90s, being a Marine, versus what her daughter's going through now, being a Marine, and how different that culture has changed, and what has changed in that culture. So that's a fascinating thing.
I did something that I'm honestly a little bit embarrassed about when the protests started happening for George Floyd. I said, I thought in 2020 racism wasn't an issue anymore, but I realized that I had been ignoring it for a really long time because it doesn't affect me, and that doesn't make things better. And so I think that these conversations that people are having, especially like in Star Trek in this episode and outside of Star Trek right now, are really good because you need to hear everyone's experiences.
Yeah.
Our stories make us human, right? And listening to everyone you can is going to give you more perspective and more information on how other people live, and it's going to make that world a better place.
Will Smith had a great quote, which is, he said that racism isn't getting worse, it's getting filmed.
Yeah.
And that was a profound thought process for me. And that's just something that's interesting. It's not that you're seeing more about it right now because it's worse. It's that now finally people feel comfortable filming it. People feel uncomfortable letting it happen.
Well, and to that too, it's so much easier to share it and spread it and send it out so that more people see it and more people can be it's like Chelsea had her eyes open. It's
Right.
It's there. It's always been there, but now there's the capacity to share it has gotten so worth-something.
And
Right.
we never
They're not
realized the
expensive.
depth of things.
You know?
I having grown up with Lakota all of my life, Native Americans, I never used the word Sioux. I certainly never used the word squaw. They're all bad words, and stuff like that. But there are so many terms that you just don't even think about it. And the other day I was talking about counting coup with my cat, right? Because that's what we do effectively, right? I'm hitting him on the head and he's
running away.
Me,
yeah.
Right. And it's like, who killed each other first here? This is not tag. This is a military maneuver between my cat and I. And so it's very much a thing. And I reached out to my buddy Christina, who's Lakota, and I said, I have used this term for a long time. Should I not be using this term? And she wrote back and said, yeah, you shouldn't be using that term. She said, more of my more militant Native American friends would have been very ticked off at you for that term. And I said, okay, well, that's cool, because I don't have a problem with that. But I do need to come up with an alternative. So I'm putting this to the world.
Oh, saber dance. You're saber dancing with your cat.
Saber dance. Nice.
There you go.
Done.
But
one of the things...
Similar issue as well with Black and African American, because I had many friends in the community when I was growing up.
Yep.
Because I was in 5 Points, which was a predominantly Black and Latino community. And I had different friends who wanted to be identified as Black and some that wanted to be African American. I had some who were like, I'm Mexican, and some who were like, no, I'm Latino, I'm Latina. These are the terms I need you to use. It's very similar to pronouns. You see this like upheaval over pronouns. You should also ask people how they want to be identified. you know, because everyone's now, especially in particular, since we have the technology, since DNA stuff has come out, everyone's finding their roots and searching for culture, in America specifically, because we're kind of the lost lambs of a melting pot where we're like, what am I?
So to touch
What
on what you
do I
said,
do? You know,
there's a book out that, well, it's been out since 2016, but it's regained, or it's hit a lot of popularity recently, and I heard about it through my wife. It's called How to Be an Anti-Racist, written by Ibram X. Kendi.
okay.
And he is a person of color, and in his book he talks about how he was being racist and didn't even know it, and he's a person of color, and getting to see how kind of the brainwashing that happens to people of color through the media and such to make them hate each other through his eyes is really interesting. And I'll post a link on here to his actual website.
Yeah, I mean,
if anybody wants to check it out.
it's a thing where it's important that we look into this, and I agree.
And discuss it and talk about it. Like, it's hard, but as soon as you start talking about it, and if you need to step away for a little bit, I've talked to my friend Maggie a lot, where we've both had to take a break because it's a lot, right? And it's scary, and people are taught to be scared of that kind of thing, right? So sometimes we need to just take a step back and take a breather and focus on ourselves for a second, and then we can come back now that we've done our mental health check, and we can open our ears and we can listen and we can be more objective and take in more information, because you can only process so much. You're not expected to change overnight, right?
Right.
It's so difficult. You just have to be willing to take that first step and realize that this is going to be a journey that's probably not at all what you expect. It's going to be difficult, but it's going to make you a better person. And so why not, right? Like, there should be good change, not rapid change. There should be good, concrete change.
It's interesting that this all comes from past tense, because we talk a little bit about racism, we talk about things like that. There is some systemic stuff that keeps people who are of color in a poverty bracket, and they get pushed into the whirlpool where they're stuck in that and they can't get out process. And in a way, even though past tense 1 and 2 wasn't discussing racism directly, in fact, they kind of stepped away from racism on it. But it does talk and address that problem in our culture, which does involve racism. Although there could be arguments that that's systemic and a process, and you can't get out of the whirlpool, and so your kids don't get out of the whirlpool, and then their kids don't get out of the whirlpool, and so you're all stuck in the whirlpool and you can't get out. It does address that mentality that I was talking about before, the one where you say, hey, you're the one that got yourself there. Well, they may not have. You know what I mean? They may not have. We respect those people who inherited billions of dollars from their dad, but we scorn those who inherited poverty from their mom. And that's a thing in our society that we need to really come around to.
It's hard to get those people that believe that way, because I mean, you and I know someone specifically that thinks that everybody's in the situation they're in because of their own doing, and it's their responsibility and their fault if they can't get out of that situation. And it's like, no, you don't understand. It's if you're born in the lowest possible income bracket family, how are they going to pay for you to go to the good schools? How are they going to pay for you to go to a good college? Unless if you happen to have an inherent ability to be insanely intelligent and bypass public school learning to get a scholarship into a college, then you're not being set up with the same building blocks that people with money are getting. And it perpetuates it.
I was talking to my mom because she taught at the school that I went to. And we have brought up recently that, some of the kids that I knew growing up, we celebrated when they graduated high school. That was a big achievement for them.
Right.
And then we celebrated if they made it into college, just if. And then we celebrated when they got out. And, we also mourned a lot of kids because there were a lot of kids who died due to gang violence that you still don't think about because they're in the poverty line and they're desperate. Their parents are working 2 jobs. These people have to take care of their younger siblings and keep them alive. And people are like, well, if they were so poor, why do they have kids? Some people have dreams and they should be allowed to live those dreams. You know, you say that America is a land of dreams, that white picket fence, and that house on the hillside and your 2.5 kids, right? And some people really do strive for that and they work really, really hard and they have just as much right to that as somebody who's born to millionaires, you know.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And they deserve to live and have a good life. And
I
it's
feel like
to figure out what we need to do to get there, but we definitely need to make improvements so that can happen. Because these people deserve it.
That's sort of what I feel like we've got a problem with in our society is even because, you know, I'll hear the arguments from our mutual friend. I'll hear those arguments of, well, what about Bob Smith over here? He made it out. Well, yeah.
That's one.
That's one.
What right? About everyone else?
Right. Why and then he'll also say the other arguments that he's got are sort of these mismatch of, well, but, you know, Joe over there, he did drugs. Well, yeah. Okay. But I mean, I still bring up all the time Rat Park, and that's one of my big things. For those of you who are not familiar with Rat Park, there was a famous study done where they gave rats heroin in the 70s, and the rats drank the heroin and died. They overdosed like that. Well, what they don't tell you is that scientist continued his studies into the 80s, and he built Rat Park, which is this huge, beautiful area with exercise and lots of other rats to play with and yada, yada, yada. Mm-hmm. And when he gave the drugs to those rats, they tried a little, but they didn't actually drink themselves to death. They actually were fine. And his conclusion was, it's the cage. It's not the drugs. But since that didn't fit our 1980s say no to drugs commentary, the government suppressed it and locked it away, and we've never heard of it. Well, the truth is, you look at Rat Park as a thought process. People don't do drugs because drugs are awesome and we should just do drugs all the time and die. People do drugs because something sucks in their life. People eat too much because something sucks in their life.
People eat too much.
It's something. It's something like
we have an obesity problem in America. People eat so much.
Right.
That's a combination too of the capitalism of making money. Of like, hey, we can sell more of this food if we use the cheaper products, which means it's saltier and fattier. And but hey, you get a bucket of it for $1 instead of this spoonful of really healthy food for $5.
Which means that these people, that there are people, I should say, not these people, sorry. Which means that there are people in poverty who are looking at this like, I can eat this or nothing today.
So when I look at past tense, what I'm kind of trying to wrap it up because we're coming up on the last 6 minutes of our show. I look at past tense, and one of the things that I really see is a bunch of people who are in the whirlpool in this sanctuary district. We've locked all of the poor people away. Mm-hmm. This is literally what the ghettos were.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Our ghettos were created as sanctuary districts. That's exactly what they were. They were legally redlined and blockbustered to lock people, the poor people, in the ghettos. And by poor people, we mean black people. And they weren't allowed to get out. Now, in the 20s and 30s, they just physically said you can't leave. In the 40s, 50s, and 60s, they said, well, you can leave, but this house in this white neighborhood is $4 billion. And that became, and it took until the mid 80s for that to be illegal. That actually was still legal into the 80s.
They had to have the right to vote for like.
Well into my lifetime before they made that illegal. But I don't see that being hard for it to happen again. Right? Mm-hmm. I don't see this. So when it says 2024 I actually do see us really close to where past tense is talking. Is it
Especially with the pandemic.
percent? Do we
talk
actually
about
have
this a
walled
lot.
cities in San Francisco? No.
Mhm.
But I do see us getting horribly close to, well, we've got to take care of all these poor people. And I don't know. I mean, I guess we could just lock them in this zone over here where we had this rundown, dilapidated section of town. I guess that's where we could do this. I don't know.
If you like, especially with the pandemic right now, you have to remember that there are a lot of people who are in that poverty line who are essential. They're essential. It's not just nurses and doctors. It's food staff. It's your local grocery store. It's your local Walmart. Your local Target. You have these big wage disparities where these people have to work. They can't quit their job and just stay home to stay safe. They have to make money for their families. And that is horrendous. And other countries are dealing with this much better because they pay, their employees a living wage, and they told everybody to lock down instead of just like the essential people. Oh no, I like to call essential personnel expendable.
That's another one of those misconceptions, is the amount of money we're talking about here. Everybody says, but you can't pay everybody's wages. That's insane. It would break us. But then you think about this. And
when trickle-down economics was supposed to trickle down?
Yeah.
Like what actually happened
of Amazon.
He's almost a trillionaire.
Jeff Bezos.
Almost the world's first trillionaire. That's terrifying.
16 minutes, if he just stopped being paid for 16 minutes, he could pay everybody's salary in his company for a year. 16 minutes. That's a major disparity. That's not a slight amount more. He wouldn't even feel that.
And is he going to spend that money in his lifetime?
No, and there are people who counter argue that Bezos has, of course, all of his funds are in shares of Amazon, which has gone nutsoid and stuff like that, and that is true.
And they say that he's done charity work, but why not start with your own staff?
Right.
I mean, that goes into corporate America, right?
And what that really isn't saying is, it's not saying that we should be accepting of where these trillionaires are. What it's saying is the people who are involved in this have become so distant from the people who do the work that you are more likely to die of poverty than you are to ever be a millionaire in this country.
Which past tense does a good job of showing that disparity. I think that we had one time where some funding went out to help people, and then it was stopped after that. And I strongly believe it's because if they continue to do it, it would become very apparent that it's not a strain on the money funds to do this.
Right.
And then they would have to continue to do it, and they don't want to, even though it's 100% possible.
Because they earn that money and you didn't. Because you're working yourself to death. I mean, Emily and I are part of a generation that will probably never be able to retire if we stay in America. Our Social Security is pretty much bankrupt.
Oh yeah, I mean, we'll be lucky if Troy and I can retire.
And that's hideous, And going back to corporate America, a friend of mine actually had to take a survey today for a job that they were applying for. It's from a company called HRD Press, who I want to put on blast. This is all on me. By the way. They do a counterproductive behavior index to stop bad hires. Just listen to what they pitch to corporate America. The counterproductive behavior index is the most cost-effective screening procedure to identify these high-risk work-related attitudes and behaviors: substance abuse, dishonesty, computer abuse, such as like sending an email from your private email during work, lack of dependability, workplace aggression, and sexual harassment. Honestly, sexual harassment, bad. Dishonesty, everyone's a liar. You're human. Christ.
I'm not.
So this is their statement. Every single day, employees don't show for work, steal cash and inventory, surf the web, email on company time, and disrupt the workplace. It is burning up billions of dollars of profits and inventory each and every year. They don't back this up with anything. And
they're talking about politicians.
A 10 to 15 minute quiz where every answer is true or false. How is that helping corporate America? How is that helping anyone but companies distrust their actual employees?
So, guys, one of the other things I'd like to say is that Lower Decks addressed that.
Did they really?
Last week.
Oh, fantastic. I need to catch up.
I know, because you won't see it on the surface, but it's there.
Because that's hideous. That's
it is
fear-mongering. You are putting people down before they even show up to work.
Lower Decks was talking about. When you talk about buffer time, that's what they're talking about.
I was in a position to where I wasn't quite a manager, but I was a little somewhere in between the chain of manager and beginner. And being who I am, I'm like completely fraternizing, I guess if we were like talking to them. And the manager's like, no, you can't talk to them. It has to be strictly business. They've got to do their job. You got to do their job. You can't have any conversations with them.
How are you supposed to work together? How are you supposed to be a team?
Yeah, it's a stupid job.
No, every day I work for myself now, and
you are the worst boss,
the worst boss ever,
and you have the laziest employee.
I do, but I mean, the truth of the matter is, I do my work. I do a lot of work, and then sometimes I just play stupid games like Sims.
Do you steal from the company?
It goes.
Are you stealing from the company?
I am, totally. I'm horrible. I also lie to the boss.
Mm-hmm.
Heaven forbid, your mom.
Your mom.
Or your mother-in-law text you.
Your
mom-in-law.
And you take that message. Heaven forbid you have an emergency and have to leave work. And now someone's dead in your family. And you have to leave your team. And you have to take time. And you have to let everyone down right now.
It's
to
true.
Go deal with this. And if you bring a single emotion in that door, how dare you?
Mm-hmm.
I'm so over it if you can't tell.
Well, we hit our hour.
We hit our hour.
So
and now we're going to ramble.
And now
so I'm going to go ahead and close this out.
I would like to say, Guy, you need to stop sleeping with your boss's wife.
I know. I do. I need to stop sleeping with my boss's wife. That's not going to end well.
Not cool.
And that's just the thing. It's true. It's so true. Our show today was sponsored by Kieran Games and Shiny Garden, and we don't know what Shiny Garden's going to do next, but they love having us on the I guess not the payroll.
The next time I hear from them about what's up and coming, I'll post it on the Facebook page so you guys can follow that as well.
Yeah.
We're on retainer.
Yeah, we're on retainer. That's it, retainer. But we're also technically kind of on retainer with Kieran Games too, because he's our supplier.
Well, and he is a small business, so remember, if you have a Starship addiction or need to start one,
or a little.
I think everybody should start a Starship addiction.
I highly suggest that you start it with him because he's a fantastic individual and such.
You get the little Transformer guys now too.
Yep.
Transformers. I think
they've gone past the first 4 too, because I saw Shockwave.
Yeah, Soundwave.
Or Soundwave, not Shockwave. Shockwave's the gun. Soundwave. I saw Soundwave, and now I've got a Soundwave. One of my favorite Decepticons, so I'm gonna have to get that one.
Ooh,
I'm still painting up my.
And is Geekway Home still on our menu?
I don't know what's going on. Sometimes Patreon gets weird. So I would still say Geekway Homes.
He's a good guy. So
and Geekway Homes is cool. So
if you're sick of your home
weird going on,
and you need a new one sight unseen.
So yeah, and then Dustin's saying he's got stuff to chat about soon.
Good.
So okay, so those are our sponsors, and also for our sponsors are our patrons, and so people like you. And that's all the time we really do have for today. We really should be going. But thanks for joining us for season 6. And this should be cool. I've been Guy.
I've been Troy.
I've been Chelsea.
I've been Emily.
And this is Geek Tank.
Live long and prosper, y'all.